Regeneration began in 2022 as a nationwide participatory public art and history project organized by Monument Lab and supported by the Mellon Foundation. Regeneration emphasizes projects with creative representation and interpretation of erased, suppressed, and threatened histories. In 2024, our second cohort built upon the foundation laid by previous teams, expanding the American commemorative landscape with projects rooted in the living histories of neighborhoods, cities, or regions that each have unique stories to tell. Kicking off with a gathering in New Orleans, the 2024 cohort connected through workshops, hands-on field trips, and some New Orleans-style hospitality to bring folks together.
It's hard to articulate how generative spaces like this are. It's those ineffable connections, those conversations, those ways that people come together because we're all doing work that is so difficult in different ways.
The evolution of public memory is formed not by individuals, but by communities. Through our collective efforts, Regeneration continues to develop strong networks of diverse thinkers, artists, and activists. Mapping Trans Joy, a trans-run Joy as Resistance project, stands in defiance of the direct targeting and hate against trans communities in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and across the Southeast.
When we talk about trans joy, it's not frivolous, it's not naive, it's not a Pollyanna thing. It is along the lines of when people talk about critical hope. It's one of the ways that we reach towards the life-giving parts of each other.
Combining physical interventions, public events, and oral history collection, Mapping Trans Joy relies heavily on organizing and placemaking tactics to execute pop-up sanctuaries and amplify visibility in a time of great need.
We can exist in a repressive political climate, and we can't always stop the things that are going to happen, but we can always support each other. We can always find these ways to live full and vibrant lives to the best of our abilities where we are.
2,500 miles away, Melting Ice is using public art and protest to bring focus to the stories of people currently and previously detained at the Northwest Detention Center in Tacoma, Washington. Through the testimonies of those detained and the efforts of the grassroots organization led by immigrants and people of color, Melting Ice is fighting to end detentions and stop deportations.
Art allows us to think beyond what is there. It allows the public to make sense of what this experience is in a way that they can engage in this sort of artistic expression and be able to negotiate with the imagery that they see.
We passed through that system. We had families in a detention center. So sadly, we have experience and we know what is happening now and what is going to happen next.
The immigration system is not broken. It is specifically designed this way to do certain things to people and exploit their humanity.
The Miami AIDS Memorials Project is making HIV/AIDS history more visible through film screenings, public artworks, oral history collection, and events, engaging with the public to take part in a profound journey of remembrance and celebration.
Capturing the oral history of how different it was at the height of the HIV epidemic because of the demographic of Miami. So many people from the Caribbean, at the same time you have people coming from the Northeast and South Beach.
We worked with legacy builders to bring a number of the houses of Miami, the House of Gorgeous Gucci, of Milan, and the House of Lords, to talk about how people have commemorated and do a performance in Vizcaya as a form of resistance that is in the kind of story of HIV/AIDS in South Florida.
We're inviting drag performers and then having to think about, well, in doing that, are we putting our community partners at risk? Are we putting the performers at risk? Are we putting ourselves at risk legally? Those are really intense things to think about that none of us should have to think about.
Highlighting the power of labor in the Midwest, You Betcha, Farmer Labor Solidarity is Possible, commemorates Minnesota's farmer labor movement, which built political solidarity between rural and urban workers. Through tactile activities, film screenings, and moderated discussion, they are engaging communities statewide, exploring what solidarity looks like today and how it can be galvanized by the lessons of this remarkable history.
You know, in the 1920s, Minnesota saw some really radical things happening around mutual aid, around how do we care for each other as communities, how do we band together against the big corporations.
We're working with an artist and an artist team to glean what is being shared by folks at these screenings about what's going on today and their family stories, their family histories.
I saw a lot of connections to Cesar Chavez and his movement in California. I feel like it speaks to a lot of the inherent importance of human dignity.
The documentary is a tool that we are using. It gets us talking about that history, but also where do we see those partnerships happening now in your community.
There's lots of history around the kind of labor that was happening on the tracks, also history that was happening sort of behind the tracks as they were moving and building these end-of-track towns.
High Iron rides the rails westward from Laramie, Wyoming, connecting former rail towns along the Interstate 80 corridor with a public art exhibit housed in a modified train car. Inside, the interactive labor exhibit, artworks, and oral history collection station make up the core elements of the community programming events in each city it visits.
The railroad in Wyoming is a touchstone for folks across politics. Everyone has a connection to it. Everyone's ancestor worked in it in some way. But we really want to amplify the stories of the folks that are not represented.
Having this living, breathing monument that is going to change and have people be able to walk in and be like, yep, I can see my family in this, or I have a story that goes with this, right? It's changing that narrative and changing what has been presented to us as history.
Heading back down south, Mobile County Training School Heritage Space and Archives represents the next phase in a standing collaboration between groups in the historic Africatown neighborhood in Mobile, Alabama. Alumni of the former Rosenwald school site collaborate with current students to encourage the next generation to dig deeper into the archival and archaeological records that surround them.
The history that's often celebrated of this community is that of enslavement. What tends to fall through the cracks is the resilience of this community post-enslavement, and that's where the important stories start to blossom. It's the resilience, it's building your institutions, building your communities, building your businesses, and no community can flourish without education.
This is a story that will help bring some of that back, help bring some of those legacy individuals back, to be able to say, this is my story, these are my people.
The Descendants Project is committed to reversing the legacies of slavery through reclamation and restorative work in Louisiana's river parishes. Co-created with descendant communities, their Liberation Labyrinth emphasizes Black agency through storytelling, collective memory, history, and folklore.
I for sure wanted it to be something that would give to the community, not something to be gazed at. We are in the middle of Cancer Rally. We're surrounded by plantations that are still in some way operational. And so I wanted something that was, again, restorative, that would speak to that trauma.
The labyrinth gives us an opportunity to draw out that through line of resistance that carries you all the way through enslavement, emancipation, the funding of education. That's all part of that tradition.
What is being done to education, the removal of American history, creates more than ever a need for projects like ours. Because if you're not teaching it in school, where else are people going to get that information?
Inspired by the bravery of the Ebo people at St. Simon's Island, who resisted slavery by sacrificing their own lives, Reclaiming Ebo Landing honors this sacred site, presenting performance as monument, combining film, art, and music with public history.
The young people don't know the story as much. The elders do. With the project that we're putting together, I think it's going to reconnect the young people.
elevating local historians, community involvement, and K-12 student programming. Reclaiming Ebo Landing highlights a pivotal narrative of rebellion and the fight for freedom.
8th graders across the state of Georgia have to, by law, take Georgia history, but their Georgia history does not include necessarily this. And so how do you build this in a way where they can see new things about the history of the place they're from?
The regeneration teams came together in Memphis for a second round of team building and workshops, and to give and receive feedback on their projects.
It's a form of validation that you're doing something right, even as you're also learning about all the things that you could do better. You see it in them, and to me, that's a really useful framework to see how we're all thinking about memory, how we're all thinking about social justice, that this is all part of the same project in many ways.
Teams were able to see firsthand the work that 2 Memphis-based teams were doing and take inspiration from how different communities in the same city offered very different avenues for exploring public memory.
Part of what we get to emerge is actually the physical footprint of where this would have existed in proximity, especially with Calvary Church. Next slide.
As new discoveries have come to light, the Calvary Episcopal Church in Memphis has grappled with the legacy of slavery in their own backyard. In response, they proposed the creation of an enduring memorial to honor the estimated 3,800 enslaved people sold on the adjoining property, the site of a slave market run by Confederate general and white supremacist Nathan Bedford Forrest.
87 and 89 Adams are 2 addresses. We don't know exactly how they were situated on the site, but the footprint will show you later where that would land. But the most important from in here to us is that what that means is that that altar almost certainly sits on the land in which enslaved people were sold.
As part of a coalition of community partners and allies, the Legacy of 87 Adams Committee was established to uncover the stories of enslaved people who were bought and sold in the shadows of historic churches in downtown Memphis.
But the numbers are all different from what they were in the middle of the 19th century. So it was that part of that unfolding story is like, it's right there.
We've been having ongoing conversations about the enslavers and who they were, and their names are on, big buildings all over the city, street names all over the city. How do we as a group get people to understand what the urban context of slavery looked like and all the ways that the city was built on enslaved labor and what that means to have a landscape in a place of trauma that does not traumatize people?
Yeah.
And that's a process we're going to have to, keep working through.
Klondike Smoky City Memory Project gathers oral histories and community records as part of efforts to revitalize this historically Black Memphis neighborhood. Through block parties, digital archives, and a pop-up version of the museum open to the public, Klondike has given their community a glimpse of what the future of remembrance in Memphis looks like.
It's more of a forgotten history. In Memphis, when you grow up, first of all, Black history is not taught in depth.
I'm not wearing a city hat and this gold chain for no reason. We are celebrating the 125th anniversary of Klondike, Golden Klondike. It was marketed as a gold mine, but it actually was a gold mine for Black people. It started middle class and organized quickly. The Klondike Improvement Club was started the first year or two Klondike was established, and they had real victories. They advocated for community parks, infrastructure, street lights. In the face of opposition, it was protest. But like I said before, Black people in Memphis could vote. And so they used that voting power to pressure the politicians to get infrastructure projects done, and which created a real political powerhouse in the Black community.
So often the burden of proof has been put on historically marginalized people, And to be able to show that history in a way through like the spatialized archive, your history does have place, is especially important to this work. So if you come over to the laptop, you can click through and see different historic landmarks that are important to the community. And if you click on each icon, it will show the history of that specific space. I've learned so much from the other teams in how to craft our story and how to tell that in a way that connects with people, because I think that's something that teams, especially like Mapping Trans Joy, do particularly well. And that's so important in this work.
When you get to meet people who are working on these kind of projects, who have so much overlap in our work, that we can look at the floor plans of their building and the building looks like the pop-up museum. Right. We can look at the way they have archived materials and find relevance in how we should archive materials. There's so much overlap in what we're all doing, and it makes you feel less alone in all of it.
That's a great statement, less alone.
Yeah.